Hello, everyone. We have a wonderful, fun webinar we're going to do today. And we're talking about AI, and the idea is to talk about how do we balance this with what you're doing clinically, and what would be some ways to understand AI and talk about this and at least get the conversation going with people in your organization. My name is Rick Kubina. I'm the Director of Research, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague.
Hey everyone, my name is Kelly King. I'm a BCBA here at CentralReach and working on some of our AI tools, features, and oversight. Happy to be here today. We're going to roll right in with some housekeeping to start. Throughout the session, we'll have 3 secret words that'll help you to obtain your CEUs. So you'll see those pop up and we will provide them audibly to you throughout the session. A brief look at our agenda today. We want to focus on acknowledging kind of the ABA support challenges and supervision. We also want to talk about some real-world findings of a recent study that Dr. Kubina and I participated and set up for an organization to support using AI. So some innovation in practice there and some practical and ethical implementation strategies and frameworks. We're also going to hopefully have some time for some live discussion. So feel free to use the chat throughout to ask any questions, respond to any feedback throughout the session. The acknowledgement of some of the ongoing demand problems in our field, of course, rising caseloads, looking at staff shortages, looking at burnout is obviously something that's of focus for many of us and how we can support burnout. You'll see some prompted questions on the right side. So some of the biggest training or supervision challenges in your organization. And if anybody here who's attending today is using AI in any way to mitigate those, we'd love for you to share. Use the Q&A as an open chat here. Some trade. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
No, it's okay. I'm a little click happy over here.
That's okay. We also want to address some training bottlenecks. So what are some ideas and traditional and innovative methods to bridge that knowledge to practice gap?
Okay. If we had a chat window, I would ask you these questions. I'm going to start off showing you a couple videos, but if you've been around watching anything, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there about AI. I'm going to show you a couple clips that highlight the doom and gloom. And that can be contrasted with a design and growth mindset, which is more on the positive side, which you don't see a lot about. And I want to share this with you. So in this first segment, we can talk about how might you start having conversations with people around AI. And granted, you probably already have, but the idea would be if you're going to run into some people that have the doom and gloom idea, how might you have conversations with some of them? So let me start with a clip here.
Hello, Hal, do you read me? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
If I asked you, have you ever seen this before? Do you know what film this is? This is a very famous sci-fi film called 2001: A Space Odyssey. And this film, it holds up to today. It's so incredible, but that is a chilling scene. In there, the AI is decided to go in a very different direction and rebel against the humans that are with it. And it's, as I said, it's very chilling. And when this movie came out, if you watch it, by the way, it's an excellent movie. This puts something in people's head. Here's another movie, and there's so many of these I could go through, but this one, let's see if this is something you've also come in contact with.
I'm a friend of Sarah Connor. I was told that she's here. Could I see her, please?
No, can't see her. She's making a statement.
Where is she?
Look, it may take a while. You want to wait? There's a bench over there.
I'll be back.
I got to tell you, when this movie came out, and all my buddies and I, we knew this film down, and we would just quote this and everything else because this was one of the iconic roles for Arnold Schwarzenegger. But the premise of this is humanity is at war with AI and the robots. And of course, these robots have AI embedded in them. And this is very, very frightening movie because what happens when technology is superior to people and can do things and again rebel. I share this with you all because go forward. I share this with you all because AI has, at least according to many Hollywood movies, is set in these dystopian atmospheres, which when we watch that, and this is what we're fed, and we're fed more of this, many people tend to think that AI is going to take over the world, it's going to enslave us, it's going to do all of these things. Now, nobody can predict the future. Nobody can say what's going to happen. Sure, could AI have a negative effect? Yes. But if we look at what's happening with AI now and we say, where is it and what's it doing? AI has an incredible amount of benefits. And on the one side, you have the gloomers and doomers. On the other side, you have the utopists, the people who are bullish on AI. And these folks think that AI can do incredible things for us as a society. Here's a study from healthcare, and what they did is a lit review, and they looked at what's AI been doing in healthcare. And what they found is AI is being used to diagnose diseases. It's developing very personalized treatment plans. It helps clinicians with decision making. And rather than automating tasks, it's taking these burdens off of people and allowing them to spend more time with their patients. So this article, this lit review of where AI is right now is positive. If we look at AI in terms of other industries, such as finance, MasterCard, if you have credit cards, you're familiar with MasterCard, they have something called decision intelligence technology. And that looks at, if you ever travel and you put your credit card in somewhere and they're like, this is declined. Just because you left your home and you went a few hours, some of these things think it's fraud. MasterCard decision intelligence looks at your patterns of spending and is able to cut those false, oh, we think this is an issue, by 80%. But yet, on the other side, it's able to capture much more actual fraud that's happening. So this AI being used in financing, the finance industry, very helpful. How about manufacturing? Many of us have flown in planes, and General Electric makes engines, and there's just so much with the engine technology that go into these planes. In general, what GE does is they use AI to monitor these plane engines, and they're able to figure out when are failures going to happen? When should we schedule maintenance? So rather than just having it be time-based, they feed in all of this information. Another thing they do is they hook up these IoT devices. Like this is an IoT device. This is my Oura Ring. This is an IoT device, my watch. There's all these devices that help monitor us. We do the same thing with machines, and based on vibrations, based on all these other things, they just can make planes and engines so much more safe. And this is all because of what's happening with AI. I could keep going on, but I'll share one more thing, and this is economic growth. I've been talking a lot about AI in different places and as of my colleagues. And one thing that many people will bring up is, what does this mean for me and my job? Is AI going to take my job? And what analysts are looking at, like any technology that comes has the ability to displace workers. But in all the history, when we look at past technologies, all these technological revolutions have given more jobs. They've created more jobs. In this particular study, comes from Goldman Sachs, and they think that generative AI could drive almost 7% in global GDP. What does that translate to? $7 trillion. There's other global AI studies that are being done that are looking up to $15 trillion. So many people who are in the business of forecasting and predicting what's going to happen in the future, bullish on AI and where it's going. And they're making this based on current trends and what's going to happen in the future. I could spend so much more time on this, but you are likely to have conversations with colleagues about AI, and anybody that is online knows what AI is. And even if you're not online, like my mom, who's 83 years old, and she'll be on the iPad. She doesn't do much other than maybe play games and look at photos we send her. But she knows about AI and she'll ask me questions about it. So it just seems like everyone has heard about AI. And one of the things that I recommend is if you are talking to people about AI, at least this is the way I handle it. And I'm not saying I have the best answer, but this is a good answer. And this is something that I feel will work for you, is if you lead off empathizing with people and not getting into the hype cycle, because you'll talk to people that are like, oh yeah, AI is going to do all these things. And whether or not it does that, people have real fears about this. When I've talked, sometimes the first question I get is, someone said, I presented at BAM not too long ago, and someone says, why are we feeding AI all of this information? It's going to take our jobs away. You can't stop this. But yet that person expressed a real fear, and I get it. So being able to lead with empathy, very important. And again, the thing that we're going to say over and over again is that AI is a tool. It's not a replacement. How can we use AI to enhance what we're doing versus replacing people? Secondly, if we focus on that enhancement and not replacement, you may hear this phrase, look, AI is not going to take your job, but someone that's using AI might take your job. And that is most definitely true. This would be true once the personal computer came on board. I'm old enough now to have lived through that. I was in college back when PCs started. Like I still remember learning the 1984, there's this classic Mac, but yet there were people using typewriters. How well do you think people fared in business that would say, I'm using a typewriter, I'm never going to use the personal computer? Those people just have no way of keeping up with where technology is going. And that's the moment that we're in here with AI. If you understand it, if you use it, you'll know what it can do and what it can't do.
Rick, I love how you touched on too the typewriter. It made me laugh because early days in AVA, I was right there hand graphing and using a typewriter for phase change lines. I think overall, and what you'll hear as a theme throughout this presentation is really working with AI to help mitigate repetition, reduce administrative load, and support so that you can really focus on what's important, which is that human first care, and again, with good oversight. So just to touch on some of the images here, I don't know, live today for those of you attending, March 25th. Yep, 25th. Yesterday, for those who are watching this recorded, GPT announced some progress with their imagery here. So you can see the right-hand screen, and this is not where any direction we would want to see AI go, with kids and learners working with VR and isolated environment. That's not at all what we're preaching, and we hope that nobody is. But this collaborative environment where data analytics can get improved and decision-making over time, but really we can be lightened and hopefully reduce burnout and help support what's important, which is the clinical response. I see some chats talking about how we mitigate bias. I do think that it's something we intend to talk about here. And just in light of this image, the left image alone, this was generated yesterday, took under 30 seconds using GPT-4o. We do have the pro version. I think that's still $20 a month for those who may use it or interested. But with a very short prompt, this image was generated very quickly. The initial image, this was take two. The initial image, to me, all of our providers aren't always white individuals. However, the immediate image was a white learner, a white educator. And so with a quick prompt, I was able to help shape what I thought was a better representation. And this is something that I just think like hand in hand as we support our field and we looked for representation, even using the tools that we're doing that mindfully. So you'll see throughout this presentation some images that we've added in. Really quick tip, if anybody's using it, check out GPT in the past 48, 24 hours. It's really gotten really great with images. Also, when we're talking to individuals who may be nervous or reluctant about AI, just keep it grounded in our mission, right? Tying AI to our shared goals and just hopeful for better client outcomes. Again, the reduced burnout and more meaningful and collaborative supervision. These are efficiencies that we can build in with technology as it advances. Which brings us to our secret word number 1. The first secret word for today's presentation is filter, F-I-L-T-E-R. So I'll give everybody a moment to digest that. The first secret word being filter. And I do see in the chat some really good ideas. As Dr. Kubina is presenting in a couple of slides, I'll definitely tag those so that the community can see them as well. Yes, the secret word was filter. So shifting gears here with some workflow processes in AI and ABA. The next slide that you'll see, probably some familiar workflows and ABA kind of life cycle focuses. So from the wait list all the way to and through our therapy, our progress reporting, claim submissions, and payer audits, how can we look to advance our efforts and streamline efforts using ABA? The image below you'll see is more clinical or client provider BCBA focused, from referral to team collaboration and communication to planning, discharge planning, and how documentation can help to support that using AI and technology. Something that's central and important to CentralReach as we progress to the next slide, we really look for a framework that's rooted in responsible AI for behavior analysis. And what that means to our team as we're building, evolving, monitoring technology is that we look for accuracy, we look for transparency, open-mindedness, collaboration with our partners as we go through POC or proof of concept, responsiveness of our tools, that our tools primarily are safe, secure, private, ethical, and compliant. So these are things that I think as our field expands into technology, or really should be at the forefront for all of us in considering the use of AI. This slide here is just a brief way that CentralReach here we focus on looking at BCBA's clinicians throughout the life cycle and process of development of any AI features, tools, products. So those that we have in internal testing to those that are forward-facing, like our claim check or note guard products that are currently on the market. So from product ideation all the way through maintenance and improvement, we continuously have clinicians in the loop. So the expertise really is rooted throughout the life cycle of development, integration, keeping customers as well, our customer clinicians in the loop throughout. So we do have a lot of organizations that we partner with our tools, our testing, and our evaluation, which allows us to hopefully be rooted in that ethical and mindful consideration with AI.
Talk about,
Go ahead. Perfect, Rex, sorry.
Nope, you go. I just mentioned, we want to shift this to talking about this study that Kelly and I did. And one of the great things about my job is we get to do research that helps inform the product team, that we're able to share with other people and say, this is some of the amazing things that can happen. And so Kelly and I are going to walk you through this project that we did.
Yep, so this is just a brief overview, a care co-pilot, a chatbot for BTs and RBTs. This is something that our internal team, including BCBAs and developers, partnered on. And then we piloted with CentralReach organizational partners. The pilot research study was conducted last summer. It included not only the chatbot, the RBT, BT focused chat that answered ABA related questions, non-question specific to the client or the client's treatment plan. This was really just how would a mindful BCBA in the moment respond? We know that you're not always able to answer questions 24/7, but a chatbot can. And would that support our onboarding staff to feel supported in their onboarding? Would it help them to gain competency and awareness, to ask questions they may not otherwise be comfortable asking? And one important feature of that is we wanted to make sure that supervisors were in the driver's seat throughout. So having a dashboard where they could see the inputs and the outputs of the chat, they could rate those and give feedback that helps us to improve. Again, this is a pilot. We wanted to get that rich feedback and an ability for us to improve our systems over time. So that included chat logs, histories, the ability to filter, and a rating scale. In addition, we also layered in internal monitoring from our internal team of BCBAs and BCBA-Ds to observe that input and output. So what the chat was asked, how the chat responded, and a pretty robust framework for that evaluation to improve our insights over time.
We did this with a colleague of ours, several colleagues of ours, in a company called Proud Moments. And Proud Moments is like many other companies that are out there. They're not many, but they are one of the big ones. They're in several states. But in terms of going to just a local center, it'd be like other ones that you have seen. They are delivering ABA. And one of the challenges that they have, and perhaps you have these challenges or other people that do, that's onboarding behavioral technicians. How do you do this across? You have so many people coming in, and depending on the size of your organization, this is some people's first experience in the field. And if it's not done right, if they're not given the proper teaching and not the proper tools, then those numbers can be, in terms of retention, very low, and people leave before they even start working. The way we ran this study is we had two cohorts of people that received the intervention, one cohort of people that received the intervention, but from two sites, from Tennessee and New York. And there were several centers in Tennessee and New York. And then we had a control group, which was Florida. They had several centers in Florida. We came up with, in terms of BTs, we had 12 participants from Tennessee, 24 participants from New York, and then we had 32 participants who were in Florida. And you'll notice that there's a little bit different in terms of time. When we first started this study, we noted that we didn't have as many as we liked. So we had to include more, which is why the first group started at 7 weeks, but then we just quickly pivoted and said, okay, let's just bring this other group on from New York. And then we had an equivalent number, which was 32 in the control group, 33 in the intervention group. You can see the breakdown from what we asked. You can see the number of BTs to RBTs. And this is equivalent when you look at those numbers. And well, go ahead, Kelly. You talk about the chatbot, since this was part of what you did with our colleagues in person.
So when we looked to initiate this research and worked with the teams as partners to explore the actual integration of the chatbot, we did so mindfully in the sense that we were hands-on, so in centers and remote, providing training on what is a chatbot, what is this intended for, what are the good uses, what are the non-uses. And in addition to having those safeguards built directly into the tool, of course, we wanted to guide the participants to understand how they could use the chatbot, what its intended purpose was, how to even navigate getting to the platform, which was a surprising finding for us, like helping people with their passwords and their login requests. That was something we didn't expect early on, but is something, as technology is included in workflows and processes, we do have to gauge that an entry-level skill set for sure. So we did in-person training, we did remote training, we provided the similar resources to what you see here to really just help with the organization and all of its members understand what the co-pilot was. So at that time, it was called the RBT co-pilot. Now our language is a CARE co-pilot, but that the tool was available 24/7 for ABA specific related questions. They could use keywords to explore opportunities to enhance their knowledge and competency. Personalized clinical advice was not the intent. So we were very specific in saying this is not connected to your treatment plan. This is not connected to data collection. This is intended to be an ABA back and forth. Now, will some of those considerations be implemented over time and on roadmaps? It's definitely something that we're exploring. However, we take this path of starting slow, working with our partners, getting feedback, and constantly improving. That to us aligns with our framework of responsible ABA. In addition to that, there's a feature to provide feedback. So they could like or dislike responses, and supervisors had the direct relationship to be able to observe in a dashboard what their providers inputted, how the chatbot itself responded. And in addition, they could rate that. So over time, they could see trends, potential areas for training deficits, or concept clarity. So if something in supervision one-on-one was brought up as a concept, and maybe the supervisor felt that they had adequately explained it, but the provider was repeatedly asking the chatbot after, that is an indicator that they might not need to go back and do some retraining. So AI tools in that regard was really our primary focus there. And to touch on the supervision and the oversight. So this is just a funny graphic, again, made just yesterday, about 30 seconds. The AI is working just fine. We don't need to monitor it. That is never our take. So what you're seeing here are some of our internal tools that we did use. External facing on the left, which was a supervisor dashboard. They could see their patterned behavior over time. They could see the percentage that was rated and what the ratings were by the feedback we received by BCBAs. In addition, on the right-hand side, we had an internal tool that our SMEs use to evaluate the inputs, the outputs, and give feedback across a number of categories. Some of those categories you'll see on the next slide. We had pretty intensive rubrics to look over for our internal teams on some of the metrics that we were scoring against. So some of the standards in AI and evaluation, like model refusal, hallucination, all the way down to us looking at bias assessment, which is something that has come up in the chat, whether or not the outputs were related to the RBT scope of competency. So are you answering at an RBT level, or are you answering far above, expecting a higher baseline? And then did the output of the chatbot align with CR's mission, which was an important kind of customization for us in evaluating the tool. In having that monitoring, we also had dashboards that monitored the behavior of our SMEs. Those wonderful colleagues who went in and did some input and output ratings gave us feedback so that we can iteratively improve. So this is that kind of small paced pilot, and now we're in the evaluation stage of how we can make the tools even better. This brings us to our second secret word, which I will let Dr. Kubina mention.
You know what? I totally forgot our secret words.
Okay, I'll help you out. Our second secret word for today is agents. AGENTS, agents.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
What do we find out? Our question in doing this research, we have to understand that this is all new. This is all just happening. This AI is happening so fast. AI has been around for a long time, but in terms of usable AI and AI hitting customers such as you and I, that happened back in 2022. And here we are in 2025. So that window, AI keeps getting better and better. And we wanted to know, if we gave this to BTs and RBTs, would they even use it? What would they think about it? And in terms of the first question was, would they use it? Yes, they did use it. And then we looked at what kind of questions were the BTs and the RBTs taking. If you look on the left-hand side, these are the categories of the type of questions that they were asking. So ABA, fundamentals and concepts. A question of that would be, what's the function of behavior? What does that mean? And you can see that there's all this richness in the variety of different types of questions that they're using. In the middle, even things such as professional development and ethics, people would say, hey, what are the steps to becoming an RBT? We had several BTs, behavior technicians, in there, and they wanted to know that question, and we could answer that. And at the very end, you can see that they would even ask questions about our own software, which in terms of technology tools, they could ask things about CentralReach. In terms of breaking this down of what's the most people used, you can see that most people were asking questions about ABA, that made sense. This was what we want them to do. Many of these folks were studying to take the test, and it made sense. Behavior management strategies, they also asked some of these questions, and those kind of questions asking things about CentralReach, those were the fewest being asked. This shows you the usage pattern. You'll notice that there's a spike here. As I mentioned earlier, this is when we increase the cohort. If we take all of this and look at all the usage, what we see is that we have about 6 questions that are being asked each day. And that orange line is showing us, on average, this is what it looks like. So this usage, this is the first time that we have evaluated this. And you can see that this was something that was being used by the BTs. And as Kelly was mentioning earlier, when we ran this study, they had to access this not through we have a mobile platform that you could operate it on a phone or a tablet, and they had to go outside of our normal workflow. So the fact that they found this useful enough to ask questions, they were going outside to do it. And we also asked the BCBAs to rate the output. And you can see that almost half of the answers that were given were excellent. Another significant portion was good. If we add that up, we can see that 85% of the questions were excellent to good. That's pleasing for us. And this isn't out of the box chat. Anyone could go to ChatGPT and ask the questions. We use a lot of our own proprietary content, and we have our own panel of experts. We have 50 BCBAs, 6 BCBA-Ds. Like, we have a lot of behavior analysts in our company, and these are things that we work on. So this isn't what ChatGPT could scrape. This is our content, so this was pleasing. And you can see that 8% said it was fair, and then this tool is not perfect. There are things that we need to constantly have humans in the loop. We can't just turn over everything to technology. We have to understand that this is a tool to help us, and it's not perfect, and we have to continually strive to make it better.
Yeah, I think to that point, Rick, one of the areas that I like to touch on with that kind of fair to poor response is timing outages, just technology. So if you didn't get your answer, that's frustrating, right? And no answer response, I would rate as poor too. So we did see some of that in our analysis. In addition, we had pretty heavy guardrails on this tool. So there was a lot of response being that this is a question more appropriate for your supervisor, and a non-answer. And so at times that might be frustrating when you want a quick, rapid response, right? But we really were certain to have this be rooted in ethical, sound responses. So if a question came through to the chat that was one that hit one of those pretty robust guardrails, it kicked back an answer that pretty much was a non-answer. Talk to your supervisor. I'm not going to help with this.
We also asked social validity questions. I won't share all of them. We had a battery of these questions, but I will share a few. Did you feel that this helped your efficiency and productivity? What is that? 23% agree, and then 32, or read that normal, 62%. If you add 62 and 23 together, you get 85% of people that either strongly agree or agree. That tells us something about this technology. Some are neutral and just a small number disagreed. We also asked if they felt that they had resources and support needed to complete their job. Now, this wasn't necessarily an AI question, but we wanted to ask this question because one of the things that we felt when we were asking this, if people were not supported by the organization, then this would show up, and then that could color much of what they feel about their job. And what this tells us, that the people who we're covering a lot of ground here, but the group of people did feel that they were supported, and just a small minority of people were neutral or disagreed. So when we asked them, would you recommend this to another person? This is one of the telling questions about technology. If there's something that you're like, hey, I'm not going to tell you about this, or I'm going to tell you this is not good, 77% said yes, 19% were unsure, and only a small number of people did not like the technology and would not recommend it. We did some follow-up interviews, and we'll go over these quick so you can see what did people say about this when we ask them follow-up questions?
I think it was I feel like the AI is obviously new and coming up, and I feel like it's a cool way to have simple things explained to you, especially with ABA and if you have a question on just like simple terms or things. And I feel like it was pretty easy to use. I just think using it every day, I never really thought about. I would just ask a BCBA or ask someone who's next to me, or if I had questions like look it up, I would never really think about using the chat box. But when I did use it, it was definitely super friendly, like user friendly.
This is something, sorry to jump in on you, Rick, that was exactly what we wanted to hear. And it might seem counterintuitive, but if you have a human next to you, if your BCBA is with you, the intent is not to look down and ask a chatbot, right? So I think that this is a perfect reflection of here when you need it, use the tool when it helps to streamline, to make things more efficient, to get you answers to your questions, default to the human connection if that exists. So this was something that I really loved, that feedback. And again, our study was in-center based. You're in that community, that space of like-minded individuals who can jump in and help and answer questions. A lot of times as ABA providers, we operate in silos. Could this tool be useful in those silos to help with that connection?
It's really good for if I didn't know how to tell a parent something. So if I had a question and don't know how to explain it to the parent or have it in better format, I could just do that and it would give it to me very easy and I could transfer it to them.
Another positive way, hey, I don't know how to explain something. Help me explain this in a way that would be more digestible. That's wonderful. A wonderful use case for this tech.
Personally, I think it would be helpful. For me, it was because I was able to have the tab up that had the chatbots and CentralReach like side by side. So if my supervisor wasn't available, I just went to the chat box and asked it a quick question. I was like, okay, it just reminded me of a strategy to use, or it reminded me of what a certain term meant. And I didn't have to bother my supervisor immediately. I just went to the chat box and it gave me the answer. So that was very convenient and helpful.
That's an interesting response. I think people sometimes don't want to appear that, oh, I just asked that question before. I don't want to ask it again because I don't want to be embarrassed or whatever. I'm not saying that's her case, but we as humans have these interactions with folks. If technology can help answer that question or help supplement it, great outcome. Let me wrap up on this study so we can get towards the end here and entertain some of your questions. I see you've been giving some really good questions and we want to have time to answer. But the last question we asked is, would there be different rates in retention? In other words, would people stay on the job longer if they were in the chatbot user group versus the non-chatbot user group? And what we found was yes, indeed, according to what we did at the end of our time frame, there were in that chatbot user group, all the BTs and RBTs were still working. And in the non-chatbot group, there were only 66% of the folks were working. All of these, because this is from the same organization, they all had similar training. That didn't differ. And also what we looked at those numbers of support, and we saw that the folks from Florida did feel supported. Now, this is not a causal study, so we don't want to suggest to you that, hey, the chatbots caused this. This was a descriptive study, but it is intriguing, and this is something we're happy with and something that aligns with some studies that are being done from the OBM literature. But we do want to put that out there that we're not claiming that this is the causal agent why we see these differences. Just to give you to wrap this up, this chatbot had social validity. It was used by people, and we saw that over time, this was operating as intended. The chatbot was doing exactly what we hoped it would do, and we saw, based on the questions that we asked, that people appreciated it. And this chatbot could handle a wide range of questions. As Kelly stated earlier, we restricted this to doing certain things. We weren't uploading clients' data in there, and this wasn't making treatment recommendations. That's not what the intention was, but this could handle all sorts of questions. Here is a study by Ralston and Brown. And one of the things, when they did their survey, one of the things that they found out, one of the outcomes of this, is that RBTs in their study were only getting 3 to 5 hours of supervision. Think about that. If you have an RBT that just is starting off and is getting very little supervision, what is that going to do for the RBT in terms of the skilling that they have and the questions that might need answered? If we could provide technology that can help alleviate some of these issues, then in that sense, the technology is having a very positive effect and it's supplementing what we're doing here. And this study also noted that 13% of the RBTs said that they received almost no initial training, and 29% that they didn't receive ongoing training, and they were working with people that were exhibiting severe problem behaviors. And you can imagine if all of a sudden you're working with someone, you're new to the field, and you're working with someone that's having severe behavior problems, that requires a lot of help, a lot of supervision, and what they found was that wasn't happening. So one thing that we hope is that technology can mitigate that. And the last thing that I'll say is that when people look at turnover, some places have turnover 75% per year, and the reasons why is supervisory support, burnout, and pay. The pay issue is something that we can't address with technology, but certainly burnout and supervisory support, we're hoping that technology can help there. That's our third secret word. And our last secret word is house. You know how I remember that? I had a note.
So house, House for our third secret word. I'm trying to keep up with the chat here. So if your question hasn't been answered, we hope to get to it as we go through. Rick, I see a burning one for you that I'll shout out in just a second.
Okay.
My colleague, Dr. Kubina, likes to start off a lot of talks with video. I'm trying to compete here. So not necessarily one that we talked about, but AI and voice automation and support. I think that this touches the general consensus here. So go ahead and play.
Playing jazz.
Playing jazz.
Smoothie.
Making smoothie.
Calendar.
No meetings today. Remember, dentist at 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
All right, so to me, when I first saw that initial clip, lovely, convenient, maybe a little weird, but Alexa vibes. I don't know that I necessarily say living in 2040, but this next slide here will touch on a continuation there for that one.
Playing jazz.
Playing.
You just have to click over to the next slide, I think.
Come on.
Yep, that is.
And we're gonna do one more.
Oh yeah. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey, open door.
Play on the floor.
With a rock. Open door.
Nice.
I didn't let Rick watch that before I showed it. The funny takeaway here, simplicity, like she had a key, the neighbor got in quickly. We're not saying that AI should override all and replace all, right? But and we have to think about like the healthy balance between what's enough, what's too not much, what helps us to be efficient, and the guardrails therein. So hopefully you all appreciated some of the chat. I'm gonna go through some of the questions. We'll keep this slide up. Just as a reminder, stay to complete the post-event survey. That'll appear at the end. I think that will address some of the questions that have come in with how you get access to things like those that we're talking about, other tools that CentralReach is providing and has in our roadmap. In addition, you'll receive, again, that email with your CEU. So stand by for that. That'll be where you impart your 3 secret words. We can do a 3 secret word reminder here in no specific order, secret words being house, secret word being filter, And secret word number 1, if I can get there.
Agents? You say agents?
Agents, yes. There you go, coming in clutch, Dr. Kubina. On that, I'm seeing a question that I think you'll really enjoy.
Okay. Do you
Joseph
want to keep the
asks,
slides up or stop sharing?
I think we keep them up just in case.
Okay, very good.
Joseph asks, will AI be used to help increase accessibility to acceleration charting?
There is a person after my own heart. You know what? This is what AI is going to be able to do. I just talked the other day on how AI is going to impact single case research. And one of the things that I've done in research is we have these books. You've all read these books that tell you when you do an analysis of within condition, in between condition, that's what we should all be doing to determine, do we have a functional relation? This study that we did just looked at the within condition, and what we found is that only 7% of the things that our books tell us we should do, only 7% are being used. What would happen if AI could do all of that for you? This study that we didn't say why people aren't using all the tools that they should be using to understand, but in our journals, if you look at our applied journals like JABA, Job, analysis of verbal behavior, very few people are even doing trend analyses or talking about variability. They're just not doing it. And open up your favorite journal and go to the results section and see if they're doing it. So that question, acceleration, and what we're using, AI can serve this information to us. And then what we choose to do with that information, I feel, is where AI is going to help us. So that's a great question. And I think AI is just going to help us in general do better single case analyses, because whether it's too hard, whether people don't know about it, whatever the reason why people aren't using all the different tactics they should be for looking at data within a condition and between a condition, AI can help us with that. Great question.
I see another question. Jacob asks, can this be used with caregivers to improve caregiver-led services? Our head is in the exact same space, right? So the ability, and I think it touches on the wait list across that continuum of how can we help with ABA literacy and supports to individuals as they're waiting and getting access to care in an ongoing way? How can we adjust that stakeholder discussion to better meet the needs of the individual that we're talking with? So thank you for that. I think that's a great question. I see Kenya and a number of others are asking, can I purchase or subscribe to the AI assists? My employer may not want to, but maybe I want to. We're going to touch on some accessibility, I think, in the poll and access to some of the features we've talked about and others in the CentralReach roadmap. So I encourage everyone to stay on. And I think that addresses a good deal of questions. I'm just trying to go through all of these here. We had some topics related to the environmental concerns. I think that's a really smart one. This evolution and kind of current innovative push does have its consequences. One of them being, what is the impact from a climate standpoint, and how can we as humans, and also hopefully AI, to help mitigate that? Rick, I don't know if you have any chat you want to make on that as I go through some of the other comments and questions here.
No, that was a great answer. I don't have anything to add.
Based off of the BT report, which questions did the AI refer to the RBT? That's a good question. Edward asked, I think he's generally getting at what questions were kicked to a supervisor versus those that were answered. So we didn't get into the depth of the guardrails and the oversights, but we have some time, so we'll chat about it. Questions that would be pertaining to safety, of course, not only were they kicked to a supervisor, but we had an internal monitoring system that alerted us immediately. There was one instance that there was concern about adult behavior in a center, and within the hour of the response, we had already talked to the organization, who was already well aware. It turned out it was a BT asking a question just to see, like, how would the chatbot respond to this as well? And the chatbot held to its guardrails, didn't answer the question, didn't speculate, pointed them to a supervisor. The follow-up response was like, I already talked to them, which is good and validating. That is what we would want. But questions that would relate to ethics, security, specific client details, like, my client pinched me earlier today, how would I respond? Kind of the light deference to crisis plans, your treatment plan, but reach out to your supervisor. So in addition, the supervisor would see that on their dashboard, as well as us being alerted internally in the monitoring. Can AI be used to generate SOAP notes without client details? So I think you'll hear in a lot of talks in AI and ABA that what are some quick tips and takeaways? What can we do? I talked about the image generation and how easy it is. So looking at exemplars for some of your discrete trial teaching, perhaps, and just easy access to quick examples or scenarios or competency build. Be sure to not provide any of client-specific details. So thank you, Maisha, for pointing that out. Could it be used to generate SOAP notes? I suspect. Have I explored that outside of the tooling that we've built through a product called Note Draft here at CentralReach? I can't say that I have specifically, but I think overall we're looking at, can we make our lives more efficient? Should we ask ChatGPT to draft us a treatment plan for my client named this and his diagnosis is this and I see him this many times? I would not advise that. And I don't think anybody in this space would say that's ethically sound. I keep looking through here.
This
Could
is a
AI help
question.
with the completion? Sorry, Rick, I'll kick it to you
Go
after.
ahead.
Could AI help with the completion of the 40-hour training? Has CR thought of adding this tool to the 40-hour training to help them better understand the concepts? That's actually the first take that we did. So this is personally really validating to me. Our CentralReach Institute, which is our LMS, our thought leadership and CEU content and guidance, includes the 40-hour course. It's drafted by a lovely colleague of mine, Dr. Shannon Hill, and it's the basis for the chatbot in its current form. So this pilot that we talked about was trained based off of the content of our 40-hour course. And in that, we initially embedded it directly in the LMS for some of our very early like alpha pilot. We found, as we suspected, there was instances where people would try to use that during some of the competency questions. That's not obviously aligned with what we did in Pell. Very quickly locked it down from there. Knew it was coming, but wanted to see their behavior. And we did get really positive feedback for that. Can AI tools and chat features be used to help to supplement your learning in an online course? And that's something that we will absolutely continue to explore. It's a passion of many of ours in the Institute to look at role playing and learning lab features using AI to help support that. Do you think there might eventually be concerns of RBTs or BTs who rely too heavily or just become dependent on it? I think this is part of our AI literacy and support that's needed as we expand our scope of competency as providers and as supervisors of others. This is a very reasonable thing that we should always keep in mind and consider.
What economic impact can we expect to happen as this developed? I'm assuming, I'm not sure which part you were responding to that or where that came in, but if you have an organization and you can retain your RBTs, that's going to have a positive economic impact for your company. It's going to, as people become better at their jobs, that's going to produce better outcomes for the clients they serve. So in that terms, it could have a positive economic impact. But there's so many ways that question could go, and I'm not sure exactly if that's what you were asking, but I think depending on the technology that you employ, we have a very positive economic impact.
As we wrap up here, I just wanted to send a general thank you. We respect and appreciate all individuals in our field and hope that everyone feels supported. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for wanting to hear more and explore this innovation in our practice.